tens of thousands of years, there has been one constant enemy to humankind, and that is the snake, or the snake monster, whether it's the Hydra from Greek mythology or Serpendor from G.I. Joe. The theme of snake for bad guys or people who want to take over the world and enslave, humankind has been part of our storytelling, part of our heritage, and, well, some people even think part of our world governments. And, that's everyone's free to have their own thoughts, and what you do with them is your own thing. Well, let's get the obvious out of the way.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
So why is it we all fear snakes? Well, part of it is that reptilian brain we all have, and part of it is just because visually they look so cool and menacing. And snake men, lizard men, reptile men, whatever you want to call them, have been showing up in popular culture for decades, and before that, throughout history. Sometimes reptilian men are evil and vicious, and other times snakes can be beneficial, shall we say. It really all depends on how they are appropriated into the story. Well, for Masters of the Universe, we need to talk about the Snake Man. Whatever the version of the story, from the original to the 2001 Mike Young series and toy line to classics, every iteration of Masters of the Universe has had Snake Men, and I'm sure they'll show up in Origins and Revelations soon enough. So where did the Snake Men come from, both as a toy line and as a storyline? Well, that's what we're going to explore today on Spector Creative, so sit back, relax, grab your favorite snake beverage, and let's jump in. So the Snake Men were created in 1985 from a memo by Dave Cooper and Matt Bosquet. So they decided that we needed a new bad guy for the Masters of the Universe. And this memo went to Tim Kilpin, who embraced the idea and said that he proposed Snake Men. Even Indiana Jones hated snakes, he notes in his memo. They're terrifying, they are great for visuals and toys, and upper management loved the idea. So from Snake Men, from Tim Kilpin's imagination to Snake Men visuals, they were slowly becoming a reality. And the mini-comics that came with the Snake Man characters were kind of unlike any of the previous ones because the story was a lot more in-depth. It wasn't just sort of fluff where you were getting to know a certain character's powers, but we were really getting storytelling. And we were learning about the history of Eternia and how these new characters fit into it. They're considered some of the best of the original mini-comics, and you can really tell. The Snake Men were also quickly incorporated into the 1987 licensor kit because they were set up to be the new bad guy team that was going to represent a threat for He-Man and the Horde and Skeletor. So everyone's fighting each other. So let's meet the Snake Men. Well, King Hiss is the leader, followed by his second-in-command, Ratlor. And then, of course, we have Tongue Lasher, the Snake Man with the flicking tongue. Squeeze, the Snake Man with the giant arms that would squeeze you. Snakeface, originally called Medusa Man by Tim Kilpin. And then Cobra Khan was sort of retconned into a Snake Man, even though he was originally one of Skeletor's evil warriors. The Snake Men went through a lot of different designs as they prepared from concept to toy line, and they actually represented a major disappointment for the designers, especially King Hiss. The idea was to make a character who could transform from human mode into a snake mode, and a lot of different mechanisms were tried, including snakes that would sort of wheel out of the arms and legs, but in the end, the only thing that worked from a logistic standpoint was snap-on armor. And the designers hated it. They thought this was just really cheaping out from the magical moment they wanted. But it worked from a costing standpoint, and King Hiss was free at last to become the new arch enemy in the Masters of the Universe brand. He would team up with Skeletor, but he would also plot against him, having risen from the bowels of Snake Mountain, which we later learn was actually his original fortress, and was a frozen, petrified snake god named Serpos. You can see a link to that video here to learn all about Snake Mountain's history. And because the Snake Men were at the tail end of the line, really only the second generation of He-Man fans, kids that is in the 80s, got to know them until The Mike Young show came around in 2001, and they became the main villains from season 2, where they actually overthrow Skeletor, take over Snake Mountain, or rather take it back since it's their original home. And this was really when they became popular again, and a lot more fans got to know them, since in the vintage line they only came out at the tail end. While the 2001 line featured most of the Snake Men, some of the others came out in the Staction line that the Four Horsemen did afterwards of non-articulated figures. And some of them had to go through a few changes, such as Ratlore became the General due to copyright issues, but hey, it's still Ratlore. And even He-Man got a new upgrade to Snake Armor, and his Sword of Power now could split open to reveal an anti-snake green projectile thingy. That's the technical term, by the way, green thingy, that he could use to blast at the Snake Men. In fact, all of the characters got refreshed packaging, and even the show was repackaged, now as Masters of the Universe versus the Snake Men. But unfortunately, this was not enough to save the show, but it did get the Snake Men out there for a lot of new fans. When it came time to doing Masters of the Universe Classics, this was the line I brand managed from 2008 to 2015, well, we were able to check off all of them, and we got to every single vintage Snake Man in the line, and even got to add some new ones. Ratlore was now back to being Ratlore because the trademark came up again and we snatched it, much like Fisto got to be Fisto again instead of Battle Fist. And because Classics was all about expanding the Masters of the universe, we got to add some new characters, and specifically some new Snake Men, which I was really proud of because I thought this faction really needed to be expanded in toy form. One of them actually even made it into a toy, Fangor, which is a character I helped co-create for the mini-comics, whose feature was his fangs coming in and out, or would have been had he been a vintage figure. And even Man-at-Arms got a Snake Man sort of makeover because, well, in the continuity of the 2000X series, as revealed in the final episode, which was a comic book pack-in with the DVDs, in episode 40, or what would have been episode 40, Man-at-Arms reverts to a Snake Man permanently as a way to create Snake Man vehicles for the toy line. And in Classics, we also got to do multiple versions of some of the Snake Men. For example, King Hiss, while we did his vintage version, and there wasn't snap-on armor, but he had a replaceable torso, unlike the original figure, well, in order to finally sort of pay off that giant mass of vicious snakes that all of the vintage artwork and the 2000X series showed when King Hiss was on screen and animated for the first time, I was really excited that in Classics, we were able to do a swappable torso that was basically King Hiss Unleashed. It was supposed to come out in the 2014 line, but it got pushed off, but finally released after I left Mattel. Alright, so let's jump into Secret Origins. So we only get one hint about the Snake Men's origin as far as the storyline. In one of the final mini-comics, King Hiss talks about the unnamed one who they serve. And this is about all we learn. And for many decades, fans had to speculate who the unnamed one might be. And then when it came time to Classics, because again, it was all about tying up loose ends, it was revealed that the unnamed one of legend and this one throwaway line was a Trollin, one of Orko's people. So a little bit older, a little bit bolder, a little bit purpler, not a female. People thought because he was wearing that face scarf, it was a female, but that's just because all Trollins have face scarves. Look at Orko. So he was a Trollin mage, magician that sort of turns to the dark side after the universe is created by the energy. It is compacted into the Sword of He, or the Sword of Power, by the Trollin overlords. And then the unnamed one, named Gorpo, tries to steal the sword. And the overlords manage to wrestle it away from him and banish him into the unknown dimension. And he sort of becomes a non-corporeal for many, many millennia until he's able to return to threaten He-Man and Eternia and all of the universe once again. When I gave creative direction to the Four Horsemen, I basically said he should be Orko plus Emperor Palpatine. And this is what they came up with. So yeah, kind of followed that design right down to a T, including a giant green blast of snake energy. When he does return in the mini-comics from his exile, he brings with him a squad of soldiers, including Skeletor's son and an older Jitsu. So what does the unnamed one have to do with the Snake Men? Well, He was owner of Mr. DNA's Big Book of Dinosaurs and used the advice given in this book to splice together the DNA of 3 different species to create the snake men. So those species would be the species of lizor, the species of lizard man from Filmation, and the caligars, the species of whiplash. And that's why all the snake men have different features. It was essentially taking all of this reptilian DNA, putting it into a blender and saying mix. That's why some of the snake men have, teeth, and some of them have, stretching necks, and some of them have stretching arms. There's no 2 the same because there's 3 different species mixed up in there that compromise the snake men. Now, eventually, Orko is able to defeat them, and he does this with the spell of separation, essentially separating the 3 types of DNA. And that's why you see them kind of spiraling out and, losing whatever holds them together. You can think of it as removing the glue that holds the DNA together. I actually had told the artist I wanted it to kind of look like this when Thanos is torturing Nebula in the original Infinity Gauntlet comic. So this was what that kind of concept or visual was based on, of the DNA unspiraling itself, if you will, and then falling apart. Now, King Hiss is not the only Snake Man leader. So the Unnamed One had different, shall we say, kind of bannermen or women or reptiles. And another one of those was on Trala, where a snake priestess named Lady Slither ruled. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones. There's different houses, different factions. King Hiss is called from the House of Hiss. So Lady Slither from the House Slither is another one of the unnamed ones. Think of it as generals would be the way to think about it. He's got different snake generals spread throughout the galaxy, and they each have their own team. Some of them have more snake men, some of them have just regular thugs, but they all rule a planet, or at least are trying to rule a planet in the name of the Unnamed One. Lady Slither was created specifically to express this concept and to also have a female snake man. Snake woman? Female snake man. I don't know. Either way, it was great to have a female, and she was based on Medusa from the original Clash of the Titans, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And the idea was the toy would have an interchangeable torso, or lower torso, legs, where you could have the human legs and then the snake form, and sort of like Mermista did with the mermaid tail. So we never got to the figure of her, but a lot of fans really enjoyed Lady Slither, and there's a lot of fan art. So that is the story of the Snake Men, created as an army by the Unnamed One to try to take over the universe, set up on different planets, some with more snake warriors, some with just local brute squads, and they have been a very colorful, awesome, dynamic foe for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe as part of the MOTU brand. And it's really exciting when they show up. All right, well, it wouldn't be a great Snake Man video if I didn't leave you with just a little bit of snake jazz.
Summer, how soups shook am I by your playlisting fleekness tonight?
You love it? It's snake jazz.
I hope you enjoyed this video and it clarified some questions about who the Snake Men are and how they got created and destroyed. If you like this video, share it with others. It helps the channel out a ton. I'll see you in the comment section. Spector out.